Welcome to Screens of the Stone Age, the podcast where scientists review movies about prehistoric people. My name is Josh Lindell. I'm a grad student studying Neanderthal teeth, and I'm here with...
I'm Dr. Kimberly Plomp. I am a bioarchaeologist. I study human skeleton, health and disease, and evolution.
And I'm Dr. Ross Barnett, a paleogeneticist who's interested in Pleistocene megafauna and extinct felines.
And today we are reviewing a new movie, which is exciting for us, Out of Darkness. It's actually from 2022, but it was only released to festivals at the time, and it was just released to a wide distribution in February of 2024, and it's early April as we're recording this, so that's pretty recent for us.
Yeah, and also, unusually for us, it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was. It was entertaining.
Yeah. Well, I'm really interested to see what we think about this because I feel like I don't have the perspective to know what the average person is going to think about this because there's too much real-life paleoanthropology in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wasn't cursing your name, so that's always good.
I actually saw this one in theaters, which is a big deal for me in general for movies, because I think the last movie I saw was in 2019, possibly. Long before the pandemic hit, I hadn't seen a movie in the theater already.
Whoa.
And this one was only released in one theater in Winnipeg, and there were only two other people in the theater, aside from me and my girlfriend, watching this one. So...
I didn't even hear about it, so obviously they didn't do a lot of advertisement.
Yeah. I saw a poster.
Oh, it wasn't in theaters very long, and I was like watching for theaters in Scotland and the Philippines so that I could tell you where to go see it. Where did you end up watching it? Did you rent it on YouTube, or where were you able to find it now?
Nefarious means.
Yeah.
All right, that's how I normally do them. This is the first one I ever paid for directly for the podcast.
I try and pay for them because it's just better quality, but sometimes you just can't find it. And you're like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was in a dark theater. It's a very dark movie.
It is.
And so normally I pause a lot and take a lot of notes, but I was trying to write on a piece of paper where I couldn't see what I was writing. And I watched this 2 months ago, so I'm going to have to rely on you guys to fill in some of the details in my memory.
All right.
So who wants to summarize this one?
I've got notes. I could do it.
Okay.
Yeah?
I've just got feelings, so...
Okay, we'll kick in with your feelings whenever you want. So, Out of Darkness. So, we get an introduction that this is 45,000 years ago, and we see some people sitting around a fire. And now this is where I first got confused, is because they were speaking in a language which is not intelligible, and I didn't have subtitles on, and I thought, is this going to be like Quest for Fire, where you don't need to understand the language? It's just there as kind of filler. And it took me about a minute or two to realize, actually, no, you need the subtitles because they're actually talking about stuff that's going to be relevant. So the first couple of minutes, I didn't hear. But we meet a whole bunch of people around a fire, and they're doing kind of typical Paleolithic things. So they're kind of flint knapping, telling stories, just sort of getting warm. And we get introduced to the members of the band. So we have Odal, who is kind of like the older man, the kind of wise knowledge holder of the group. We meet Adam, who is the leader. He's like the male, the kind of prime life, strong hunter, all the kind of cliches about a cave person. He is them. We have Ave, who is Adam's partner. She is about 9 months pregnant. And so she's sitting around the fire as well. We have Gear, who is a kind of youth, late teens, early 20s. He is Adam's brother. I didn't work this out until a lot later, but that's the kind of the main relationship there. So this is this seems to be a kind of patrilocal society where you have related males mixing with unrelated females as a group, which is interesting. We can talk about that later. But then we also have Heron, who is Ava's and Adam's son, I think. Can you back me up on that? Yeah, he's Heron.
Yep.
And their gender is kind of ambiguous. I think this is played by an actress, but is Heron supposed to be a male? And I wasn't quite sure.
Wikipedia says son.
I thought Heron was a boy.
Yeah, but the actor that plays them is female. So I don't know. And then last of all, we have Bea, who is called the Stray. So she's not part of the group. She doesn't have any connections either through kind of group bonding or through kind of being a partner of any of them. She's just brought along. And when they're sitting around the fire, we kind of get the story of how they arrived where they are. So these guys have basically split off from the main group of humans, and they've gone west by themselves to seek new lands and new civilizations, and to boldly go where no person has gone before. And that's it. That's they're in an unknown land. It seems very, very barren. There's not a lot around, and they've just turned up by boat. They have kind of boat technology, and they've turned up, and now they need to very quickly find something to eat, especially for Ave, because she is 9 months pregnant and starving. So next day, they're straight onto the job, tracking animals. Gear and Adam are walking along, and they follow a trail, and it leads them to a butchered mammoth, which is interesting. There's nothing left of it. It's been fully...
Yeah. It's like more eviscerated than butchered, right?
Yeah. Though, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of flesh. I mean, the special effects of the mammoth skeleton are pretty good. It looks distinctly mammoth-like. It's about the right size, but it has been stripped of flesh. Though, of course, the bones are there, and any Paleolithic hunter worth their salt would know to take the bones and get the marrow out of them as a food source. So that's inconsistency number one. But this really unnerves Gear and Adam, because who has hunted this mammoth and who has stripped it? They don't know. They've not seen anyone. It's a bit scary. But they decide not to tell the rest of the group until they figured out what's going on. And then at the end of day 2, they're sitting around the fire again, chatting, still hungry. We notice that Bea sort of, I think the kind of, the suggestion is that she's just started menstruating, so that's kind of a sort of plot point. It's picked upon by Ava, who kind of takes her away and has a very kind of not very straightforward talk with her about what it means. And so yeah, I feel sorry for Bea just having no clue what's going on. But while she's disappeared to sort of wash up, Adam comes and has a very, very creepy interaction with her, where basically he says that because she's a stray, she's one that's kind of just been taken along for the ride with the group, he can do whatever he wants with her. She is essentially of no importance to him, and he will abuse her, essentially, is the subtext that he's giving across, and she won't be able to do anything about it. So that's not great. But while this is going on, they sort of hear noises in the dark, which is a bit creepy when you're in a strange new land, and you've seen evidence of hunting by other individuals of unknown origin. It cuts to the next day. They're still walking. It's all misty. Heron, the youngster, sort of messes about in the mist and hides from Adam, who gets really pissed off at him for doing that. Obviously, that's not a cool thing to do. There's a bit of heavy foreshadowing there. And they come across a really spooky wood when they're walking, trying to get to find new shelter and new animals to hunt. And Adam, who really brooks no dissent, decides that they're going to go around it, even though that's going to take them a couple of extra days. Then, when this has happened, they're sitting around the fire again. You know, this is a Paleolithic. Everything interesting happens sitting around the fire. Gear's making a little, I think they're called a thaumatrope, or I used to call them a whirligig. So it's a little disc of ivory or bone with two slightly different images on either side, which you put some string through. The famous one is of a bird on a cage. And on one side, you've got an empty cage. The other side, you've got a bird. And if you sort of spin it round, it looks like the bird is back in the cage. And Gear has made Heron one of these, which is really cool. It's of somebody hunting some kind of prey animal, which looks like when you spin it, it looks like it's getting stabbed. But the weird noises are still there around the campfire, which puts everyone on edge. And they're all sitting there defensive when suddenly Heron disappears. He's been taken, which is a huge shock. It's pitch black. Outside of the kind of light of their fire, they can't see anything. Adam goes to look, but Gear tells him to go back because they won't be able to find anything. They'll just have to wait till the morning. And so that's what they do. They've missed the youngest member of their group has disappeared, and they're all slightly terrified of what's waiting for them in the darkness.
He was like pulled into the darkness.
Yeah.
Like he didn't just
totally.
like vanish, he was grabbed. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was scary.
It very much looks like the kind of thing that a cave lion or a saber-tooth would have done, which got my hopes up.
Yeah, exactly what you're terrified of when you're sitting at a dark, like in the forest with a fire.
Yeah, with your back
happened.
to the dark.
Yeah.
So they're tracking the kind of trail that Heron's left behind, and they find his clothes, which is obviously not a good sign. And they keep following, and it leads them to the spooky wood that they saw yesterday.
But the clothes is also, they're covered with this black tar gunk stuff that stinks.
Yeah, which isn't
they
blood.
don't know what it is. No, it's
they don't
not
know
blood.
what it is. And it doesn't. I don't think it's ever really explained what it is it?
No, it's never brought up
No.
again.
Mud, perhaps. I don't know.
But they would know what mud is.
Yeah, you'd think. Who knows? So they decide to keep following it into the wood. They want to get Heron back. They've not found his body. So they all decide to go in. Just as soon as they get into the wood, they say that they decide to blame everything on Bea. She's the stray. She's the one that kind of is their scapegoat for everything. They say that they're being hunted by a demon, that it's her fault because she's on heat, which I thought was a really kind of horrific thing to say to her. So she's left behind while they go off to try and hunt for Heron into the creepy woods. And so they keep going, and they leave Bea for, it seems like 5 minutes, but she's not having any of it. So she goes off on her own. She takes the spear that's been left behind and goes with them. And the rest of the group find a weird skeleton pit, which is full of like dead animals and bones and mud and stuff. It's not cool. But they don't find Heron.
It's disgusting.
Yeah. They don't find Heron, but they decide to stay in the wood, which is also seems like not a great idea. And they decide to light a fire in the wood, which seems like a worse idea, especially when they hear more weird noises, like super creepy noises like they'd heard before when Heron got snatched.
But they think it's the darkness, right? Like there's a demon in the darkness, so they have to make a fire to fight.
They think it's supernatural.
Yeah.
And this is something that Odal, the kind of wise man, who seems to not know jack or shit, kind of really ramps up their fear levels by calling it a demon. And Adam decides to sort of head off into the dark to hunt out whatever it was that had taken Heron. And he gets attacked off screen. He screams, he calls for Gear. Gear is petrified, but he kind of blindly kind of looks into the darkness to see if he can help Adam. But Adam is absolutely minced. He's had his jaw shattered, I think. It's been pretty much ripped off. It's not great.
Brutal. No.
Yeah.
But Gear also waited till like the screaming stopped. Like he sat there and we listened to Adam get like brutalized, and then the screaming stopped, and then Gear was like, "I'm gonna go save him."
Yeah. Gear is not a brave character, and I think who would even manage like to last a day in this kind of scenario. Anyway, Adam manages to kind of crawl back towards the campfire. We see he's all messed up, and there's no way he's going to survive that. I mean, he'd need a sort of 6-month trip to A&E to fix his face up, which isn't available in 45,000 BP. So Odal says, Gear, you're going to have to put this guy out of his misery. It's time to kind of nut up or shut up. And he can't. But Bea does it. Obviously Bea has no love for Adam. He's been super creepy towards her. And so she's the one that kind of stands firm and gives him a flint to the heart, I think, which puts him out of his misery, and shows how strong and how forceful Bea actually is. But they're still in pretty big danger. Apart from the kind of demon in the darkness, they're still starving. They've not found any food. And Ava starts to convulse, and Odal, very blindingly obvious, says that she needs to eat. And then immediately a solution presents itself, in that you've got Adam, who's sitting there like 300 pounds of muscle and a lot of hungry individuals. And we get quite an interesting insight into the kind of the background, the sort of sociology of this group. So we hear them saying, "We don't eat our own," which is interesting because it does imply that they'd eat other people, which we know is something that went on. And they ask the question, "Do you want to survive?" Which they clearly do. And Bea again sort of steps up, says, "Right, I want to survive," and she does the butchering of Adam, and they all sit and eat for the first time in probably days.
Well, Greer doesn't eat. Yeah,
Greer doesn't. He kind of buries his little spare rib of Adam in the ground while everyone else eats. So now their first immediate concern has been sort of satisfied. They've had something to eat, even if it was their leader. But now they need shelter. And now they're down 2 individuals. Heron still disappeared, and Adam is toast. So they need shelter. And that kind of pushes them onward. And Gear takes Adam's spear, which is a very nice... I'm not sure if it's meant to be mammoth ivory or if it's meant to be kind of white wood, but it has lovely carvings on it as well. It's like some beautiful kind of like a totem or a spear of power or something. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 spears in the group. The other one has like microliths set into it, which is pretty cool as well. Mm-hmm. So now Gear is sort of in charge, and he has to lead them to shelter. But their first job is to get out of the wood. And Gear, kind of as the most useless member of the group, pretty much somehow manages to lead them straight round in a circle, even though the wood is not a huge wood, I don't think. They could climb a tree and find out which direction they need to go in. Anyway, this is not good. So they're still stuck in the wood. They find Adam's body. That's how they know they've circled back. Adol decides to take over, and Adol's way of dealing with the problems is to take Bea and present her as a sacrifice to the demon. She's the stray. She is of no value to the group, it seems, apart from the fact that she's the only one that ever seems to step up. And so in cahoots with Ave, they kind of grab her and take her back to the stinky bone pit, which they'd found the day before. And Gear gets knocked out while this struggle is going on. Adol is fully paranoid. He's accusing Bea of leading the demon to them. He's kind of instigating this. And we get a bit more insight as well into the kind of group's dynamics while they're kind of kidnapping Bea to take her and sacrifice her to the demon. We see that Ave has an ivory necklace of little babies round her neck. And it's strongly implied that each baby stands for a kind of lost pregnancy. And so the reason that Ave is helping Adol to sort of sacrifice Bea is because she doesn't want to lose the pregnancy that she has just now. Especially after Heron has disappeared as well. But Bea is made of pretty strong stuff. She escapes, and Ava and Adol are sort of trapped in the stinky bone pit. Adol stabs Ave because, he wants to sacrifice somebody. It doesn't have to be Bea, it just has to be somebody. Ave trips Adol up and then dies, but Adol's still half alive, sort of stuck in the pit with stab wounds. I think Bea stabbed him as well.
In the knee or something, right?
Yeah, somewhere really sore, which prevents him from getting up. But he's not dead, he's there. And then we get a really nice kind of clue as to whereabouts this is supposed to take place when we get a strong northern lights, aurora borealis, beautiful green ribbons in the sky, which kind of amps up the sort of tension and the action. And Bea kind of goes on her mission to get revenge on these people. So she finds Gear, who's now woken up from after he'd been knocked out. They go together. They see that Ave is dead and Adol is dying. While they're watching, they see Ava getting dragged away, the same way that Heron did, just sort of snatched into the dark, so that the demon, in quotes, is still active. So together, Bea and Gear watch Adol as he seems to encounter the demon, which sort of kills him. We don't see exactly what happens, but he doesn't look very happy, and then he ends up dead.
And we see the demon, like it.
Yeah.
It looks kind of like a forest demon, like covered in moss and almost looks like a haunted tree-ish type thing. It's creepy.
With a skull face. It's really nicely done. And while this is happening, Bea bursts out and stabs the demon. She's not scared of no ghosts, and removes its head. And that's when we get the kind of realization that this isn't a demon, this isn't a cave lion or a saber-tooth, this is a Neanderthal. We have a really nice view of this individual who's wearing a skull and leathers and furs. And
such a Scooby-Doo moment.
It is totally. She would have totally gotten away with it if it weren't for those pesky hunter-gatherers.
Yeah.
So the Neanderthal is sort of being stabbed by Bea and removes the head. We get a good view of a really nice Neanderthal makeup.
Yeah.
And we also see that this female Neanderthal is wearing Heron's thaumatrope, the whirligig, which is not a great sign, especially since we've just seen it kill Adol, and Ava's just disappeared. So now the Neanderthal runs away, while Gear and Bea are kind of shocked that this demon looks quite a lot like them. It's a human, and they have a bit of discussion as they sort of follow the Neanderthal's trail that it's like us, it's not like us. It has shelter, and we need to take it. What if there's others? Well, if there were others, then we'd be dead. Why are you not terrified of this uncanny valley human? And Bea says, I'm scared, but I want to live. And so they kind of track the Neanderthal all the way back to their cave, which is, it's hard to tell how far, but it's, less than a day, it seems. And they're smart enough to realize that this feels like a trap. They're going into a dark cave where they know this Neanderthal who's killed in front of them lives. There might be others in there. And there's now just the two of them left. The only people left are Gear and Bea, and they've got their two spears. But the cave is huge. They explore it very tentatively. Bea finds a kind of crawl space, which is only a little bit wider than she is, and decides to crawl into it sort of head first. But when she comes through that crawl space, she can see that there's more to the cave inside there. And while this is going on, there's lightning and thunder outside, which gives a very kind of creepy flashes of information about what we can see inside the cave. So most of the time it's dark, apart from when the lightning kind of lights it up. And while we're lurking around, lightning flashes and we see there's a Neanderthal just behind Bea, about to pounce on her, which it does. It's not the same one that we'd seen before. It's a different one. It looks like a male this time, but it jumps on her, and it's clearly a male Neanderthal. It's going to be infinitely stronger than a teenage Homo sapiens. And so he pins her down fairly quickly. He breaks her arm, it looks like, against a rock to incapacitate her, and is throttling her to death, essentially. She's come into his cave. He's standing his ground as these kind of attackers are coming in. And just as the life kind of leaves Bea, she kind of acts dead. She's not dead. She whips out her flint knife, which she had hidden in her furs, and slashes the Neanderthal's throat, which really does a number on him. And that's him dead, but she's still alive. And she still has her spear and one working hand. Whereas Gear is still hanging back, doing bugger all. But he does follow through the crawl space, and Bea kind of keeps going deeper and deeper into the cave. And then she finds a hearth. So here we have signs of people. We have a hearth, we have a fire, and we have Bea. Gear is falling behind. The Neanderthal with the neck slashed is finished off by Gear, which is probably the only useful thing he does in this entire film. And then Bea sees beside the hearth there's a bundle of furs, which is kind of slowly moving. And so she kind of very tentatively goes over. We don't know what's going to be in there. Is it going to be more Neanderthals? Is it going to be a baby? Who knows? But she pulls it back, and it's Heron. Heron's there. He's alive. He's unharmed. He is safe beside the hearth. And then Gear turns up. And then the Neanderthal female that they'd followed all the way there turns up. And Bea is really kind of angry and stressed and nervous. And she threatens the female Neanderthal. The female Neanderthal basically just turns around and wallops the crap out of Gear, sort of smacks him in the head with a big stone. That's him done for.
Killed him so easily.
Oh yeah, I mean he's just waiting to get killed essentially, despite the fact that he's got his big spear. He doesn't use it. So now there's only Bea, Heron, and this female Neanderthal left. And while this is going on, they're sort of trapped in the cave, in the Neanderthal's cave. And she starts to speak. So she has language. She tries to say something to them. Obviously, they can't understand. And it's not subtitled, so we can't understand either. But Bea goes on the attack and sort of swings at the female Neanderthal, knocks over some of the fire, sets the cave on fire, essentially. And so now they're trapped in a burning cave with the Neanderthal. Luckily, there's a kind of escape chimney, which Heron and Bea go up and manage to get out to the surface with. The Neanderthal's not dead. She follows after them, but she gets stuck at the top. Presumably her extra wide shoulders or hips or something prevent her from getting out. And all this is at the same time she's essentially being cooked from below by the fire in the cave. And Bea is still kind of in charge. She's the default leader. Now there's only her and young Heron. And she goes back to the Neanderthal who's trying to speak, trying to reason with her, but Bea just kills her, and that's it.
Yeah, she's begging for help.
Yeah, that's definitely what it looks like. And then suddenly, we just have Bea and Heron left, and Heron is devastated because he explains this female Neanderthal, she wasn't trying to harm him. She knew that he was starving, and she wanted to protect him. So that's why she took him away from these useless hunter-gatherers who couldn't find food. She took him to her home, to her hearth, fed him, looked after him, kept him safe. She didn't kill Ave. What she did was took the body of this 9-month pregnant female back to her cave to honor her. She kind of set up a what would you call it, a pyre or some kind of funeral setting for her. This is all a massive cultural misunderstanding. Heron says, those things killed them. And then Heron says, they aren't things, they're like us. They brought Ave's body to the cave. They wanted to save the boy who was starving. They've exterminated these unique people because they didn't understand that they were trying to be helpful.
They did rip off Adam's face, though.
Yeah, but he was going after them with a big pointy spear.
I guess, but they were making creepy noises in the dark. I mean, like you're kind of asking for it, right?
Well, they were probably shouting, hello, can we help you, in Neanderthal.
Yeah, that's true.
And the film basically ends with the question, what do we do now? Heron asks, and then Bea says, well, we try again. And she I guess a nice kind of final note. Yes, she's killed bloody everyone, but she does do the decent thing and gives them a kind of care and burial, even the Neanderthals, now that Heron's explained that they were actually more human than human, essentially, trying to save people that weren't like them instead of trying to kill them.
Mm-hmm. And she realized that it was her fear that pushed her into killing without thinking or stopping. Right?
Yeah.
But to be honest, all the signs were pointing to that they needed to be killed. So.
Okay.
Well, you wouldn't have?
No, I mean, I would have been the first one to die, clearly. I mean, that's...
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, I would have been the first
in a horror film,
to die.
I'm going to be the first one to die. That's just the way it goes.
I would have died before the shenanigans started. I would have fallen into a hole or something just on the walk.
Yeah, you'd have been bitten by a kind of malarial midgie or something and died of a fever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I like this movie, but let's get that major plot hole out of the way right at the beginning. The whole movie happens because the Neanderthals saw a child that they wanted to help and kidnapped it, and then that starts the whole thing in motion, which just doesn't make any sense at any level. So
I don't know. I think it does make some kind of sense. There's definitely cases of modern humans kidnapping children for similar reasons.
All right.
and especially since it seemed to
it's
just
not
be
a good reason, but it is a reason.
a male and a female, and if they were feeling like they wanted a family and maybe their child had died, they were like, oh, let's just take this one. They're not feeding it enough, but they did it in a super creepy way. Like they set themselves up. Like they seemed like demons, right?
Yeah, they're like making banshee screams in the night, and then they scoop in and like supernaturally scoop this child away from the fire in a way that like I was talking about this with a friend of mine about how it really seems supernatural at first, and then it becomes a normal human and all the supernatural stuff falls away. And he was like, well, you know, it could be like this like magical realism. It's happening in the minds of our protagonists, right? So it seems to them like it's supernatural because they're scared. And then that sort of condenses to reality. And so we're sort of seeing it through the minds of the protagonists. But that doesn't explain how you could snatch a child away from the fire, you know, so fast that you're not seen. If you're, again, like you said, not a saber-toothed cat, which could probably do something like that. But if you're just a human screeching like a banshee to scare people, and then walking up in the darkness
like a wood demon outfit. Like, if I were to walk outside right now wearing that, I would expect people to be upset with me.
But this thing, that's why they had to snatch them, because if they just turned up and said, oh, can we have your kid? They'd have been speared straight away.
Yeah, but they could have just done it quietly in the morning.
Hello, in the daylight. I see you across the prairie here. I see you across the tundra. Do you need help? Would you like to share our food?
Well, they probably don't have enough for, 5 of them. And maybe they've met kids before.
But even if they wanted to kidnap the kid, they could have done it in a less dramatic, less supernaturally kind of way, right?
They should have done it in the mist when he
lured him away, and then he just disappeared.
Yeah, that's how they should have done it. And then
stopped making noises. They could have sat in their cave until the adults had left the area. They didn't need to creepily hunt and surround them and make noises in the woods. Like, they were just asking for it.
Maybe these Neanderthals are nocturnal. Maybe that's why it had to be at night.
But they didn't have to bug them, though. Like, they could have just disappeared.
What do you do when there's no TV? I mean, you got to get your kicks somehow.
But I made this outfit. I want to use it.
There is a TV. It's the thaumatrope.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was definitely much better than other films which have similar sort of themes. I thought it was a coherent story. It didn't feel boring, which a lot of these kind of, Paleolithic people have to find a new cave, or Paleolithic people have to fight another group. They just get really boring, but you kind of felt invested in the characters because there weren't really very many. A lot of these films, they have like dozens of people sharing their cave, and you never get to know any of them except as, fodder for dinosaurs or whatever. But here, each of them has a name and a character and a position, and that makes it interesting.
Mm-hmm. It was beautifully set, too. But what I found annoying, of course, and I'm just going to point this out, is that Odal was a male that was unrelated to them, but he was just known as the wise old man. And Bea is a female that's unrelated to him, and so she's the stray. You're like, fuck off.
Yeah. Yeah. And Adol doesn't seem to actually know anything. He doesn't do much apart from give them rubbish advice about how they're being chased by a demon.
And then kill the pregnant woman at the first instant that he thinks it might save him.
Yeah. You kind of get the reason why they were all kicked out of the main tribe, because they're all spectacularly useless apart from Bea.
Yeah, they're the misfits, right?
Yeah.
But they're the one, like we watch these misfit shows too, like this with Wallace and Gromit and stuff. But these ones were just rubbish, and they didn't redeem themselves, right?
No. I mean, even Bea, who's sort of the hero, she's kind of inflicted a mini genocide on these endangered Neanderthals for no reason other than just she couldn't be bothered to try and understand them. You'd think that when she found Heron and saw that he was safe and protected and warm and well fed, that she'd maybe think twice, but no.
So someone suggested to me that something we could do on this podcast is to come up with a bingo card with every square as like a common caveman movie trope. And so I thought it would be fun to just, like, as we watch movies, sort of build up this card as we watch. So we've got like 4 or 5 different stereotypical tropes in this movie. The main one being, which we see in like every caveman movie, which is at the end, it was the humans that were the bad guys all along, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've already mentioned the that sort of projected misogyny, that they're in the past and therefore they must have the misogynistic views that our society had in the past and still does.
Furs with the hair on the outside, that's a trope that bugs me.
But they did have some that had fur on the inside
Yes,
too. Like they
I
were
did see
wearing
that.
cloaks with the fur on the outside, but their tailored clothes had fur more on the inside.
Yeah, that's true. Cannibalism, that kind of crops up more often than you'd expect in caveman movies.
Or maybe as much as you would, because throughout like the decades, there's always been, arguable evidence of cannibalism in the human fossil record. So that might be something that they're picking up on.
Yeah. Bad flint napping. I think that's something we should include on the bingo card as well. We do see some napping at the beginning, but it's pretty terrible. I mean, even me as somebody that doesn't know how to do flint napping could tell that it was rubbish.
But on the other hand, we have nice microliths in one of the spears. Oh, I don't think we've ever seen microliths before, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
And I thought that was a later technology. I thought you don't get microliths until the Mesolithic, or is that wrong?
No, you get microliths in the... So this is set in 45,000 years ago, which is the beginning of the Upper Palaeolithic, which is where we have the transition in Europe from Neanderthal technologies to modern human technologies. And microliths are part of that. Okay. This is presumably Aurignacian, which is the first Upper Paleolithic industry other than Chattelperonian, which I believe we think Neanderthals made. I'm not sure about that because I'm not a tool expert. But Chattelperonian is kind of a mix of the two. And so I think the idea now is that Neanderthals were sort of learning from modern humans and that's their transitional thing. But the Aurignacian is securely modern human technology. And you start to see microliths in the Aurignacian, but you really see them in the Gravettian. I excavated an Aurignacian and Gravettian site in Serbia, and some of the tools that you find in the sieve from the Gravettian are like 1.5 centimeters long and like 1 millimeter wide. They're like tiny little blades. But just for everybody listening, what a microlith is just a small stone tool. And in this case, they were set into the wood. So you had multiple microliths set into a groove. So you get one continuous blade from multiple pieces of stone. And normally when we see spears, they just put a big rock at the end, a big pointy rock, and they call that a spear point, which, I mean, spears were more sophisticated than that in most cases, right? So It is nice to see the microliths in this one.
Yeah. And I think it's, as moderns who don't really make things out of stone anymore, it's really cool to appreciate that it's a really fantastically economical thing to do. If you've got a kind of limited resource like flint, you could make a nice, fancy, big hand axe, but for the same amount of stone, you could make, 12 spears with these microliths, which would be just as sharp, if not sharper.
And also, if you break one of your stones, you just put it back in, right? If you break a spear point, you have to replace the entire point. With microliths, you can replace them one at a time if they get damaged.
It's modular, yeah.
Yeah.
Should we talk about other bingo things or other inaccuracies?
Yeah, any inaccuracies or any tropes. Let's just go through them.
Is Bea kind of a final girl? In the kind of horror films, does she kind of fulfill the final girl kind of role, or does it not count because Heron survives?
No, because he's a kid.
Okay,
so it's kind of different. Like he becomes her dependent, really, right?
Yeah.
But also when he grows up, another trope is Adam and Eve, right? They're male and female last two. They're going to be the founder of the next population. Also, but before them, we have Adem and Ave, which I don't think are coincidental names there, right? So we have the Adam and Eve trope.
Coincidence? I think not.
One thing that... well, first of all, the female Neanderthal, I think, looked great, but that male Neanderthal that we never get a good view of, and I wasn't able to pause it because I was in the theater, so you can back me up about what you thought. That male Neanderthal looked ridiculous. It looked like a clown to me. literally wearing like a curly red-haired wig, and I'm like, what is this? One of the reviews on IMDb said it was like a live-action Fred Flintstone.
I didn't get that. I thought it was quite good. I didn't even notice that his hair was red until he...
No, I didn't either.
It was very dark, but it was like
dark.
a curly afro wig. It was weird.
Okay. I'm gonna have to
It all happened so quickly. It took me a while to realize it wasn't the woman, and that was mostly the length of the hair that gave it away. Yeah.
I think he had did he have a beard or a mustache?
It's hard to tell.
No,
I don't think so.
Maybe like a short stubbly thing. But also, I have in my notes that it looked like one of the Neanderthals was wearing like a coarsely woven fabric. Did you see that?
No.
I was too into all the tension and the action and
Yeah.
Well, if the Neanderthal was wearing a woven fabric, that doesn't track because as far as I know, there's no evidence that Neanderthals wore woven fabrics, and the oldest woven fabrics are Upper Palaeolithic, which would be, 30-ish thousand years. And so the evidence for woven fabrics comes from some like almost microscopic flax fibers from a site in Georgia. And then after that, impressions in ceramic, where you make a string out of fiber, and then you sort of use that to make impressions in ceramic, which is again also Upper Paleolithic. So I think they're talking about like Venus figurines or portable art, because we don't actually have ceramic pottery like pots in the Upper Paleolithic, as far as I know.
Yeah, I guess like the Venus of Willendorf looks like she either has a very kind of close knotted hairstyle, or she's wearing a woven hat. I was disappointed that there weren't more Paleolithic animals in this. We always see it's just like a dead mammoth, but you'd expect there to be animals everywhere.
The point is that they're starving, right?
Yeah. But even
is there any reason that they should find themselves in a situation where there are no animals? Like, was there any, time or place in Europe in the Paleolithic where we would have expected herds to dwindle so much that people would be starving?
Possibly. I guess maybe during the glacial maximum, when the ice is at its biggest extent, then you'd find sort of polar deserts around the areas where the glaciers end. But the sort of thinking is,
but we're decidedly not in the last glacial maximum, because we're 45,000, which is
we're not
MIS3 interglacial, right?
Yeah. So no, not at that time period, and the kind of geography is kept a bit ambiguous. My assumption was they'd either gone west across the Baltic to sort of southern Scandinavia, or they'd gone west from mainland Europe to Britain. I think the Scandinavian one makes more sense given the strength of the Northern Lights, but I think, I don't know.
To get to Britain, they would have had to pass through like 1,000 miles of Neanderthal territory, so you would have expected them to meet somebody already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
45,000 years ago is exactly the right time for modern humans moving into Europe, meeting Neanderthals, and I think there was just a new paper pushing back this date in Central Europe, because I think they just found evidence for modern humans at about 45,000 years ago in Germany. So previously, the earliest Upper Paleolithic sites were about 45,000 in like Eastern Europe. But definitely at 45,000, this is, maybe we can talk about our expectations for this movie, because going in, I had an idea of what it was, but I had this like slim chance, like maybe it's just actually a supernatural horror movie and it's going to be like a ghost or a monster or something. But knowing that the movie was set 45,000 years ago, before I went in, but also they put that on the screen right away, 45,000 years ago, in my mind, that tells me exactly what was going to happen, and beat for beat, like I was not surprised by this movie at all. I knew exactly what it was going to be. And what do you guys think? Were you surprised by this twist?
I was full on with the demon right up until the mask came off, and then I was like, "Oh, they Scooby-Dooed it!" Like, but up until that point, I thought I was full on that it was a demon.
No, I think I always got that it was Neanderthals, but I wasn't sure whether right until the end whether they would just have them as bad guys or whether there would be a twist. So I thought that was nice at the end that they did give it the twist.
Yeah, I think with that premise, modern humans moving into Europe at 45,000 years ago, the logical answer is, they meet Neanderthals. And then because we've seen so many movies at this point with that trope where modern humans are the bad guys, I was like, 99%, I'm like, if they don't do the twist where the Neanderthals are the good guys in the end, then they blew it, basically. So, like, on the one hand, it's as good as it possibly could have been with that plot. Like, I would have been disappointed if it was otherwise, but also I was fully expecting it all the way, so it was no twist at all for me, which that's why I feel like I can't really evaluate what the average person is going to think about this movie, because if you are not an anthropologist and you're not like up on the literature, you don't necessarily know what it means for humans to be walking into Europe 45,000 years ago, right? So I was reading through reviews on IMDb, and it only has a 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb.
I think it's better than that.
It's lower than I would think.
Yeah.
I think the biggest problem is that it was marketed as a horror, and it really isn't, because in the end, all the horror is undercut by the fact that they're just people, right?
Yeah.
So if it was marketed more like a thriller.
Yeah, thriller.
Yeah. But then reading through it, there's some interesting concerns people have. Like, first of all, they say the cast is like conspicuously multi-ethnic, and like, I don't know, I thought the casting was great. This is what you would think a population would look like from this time. It seems to be right on. If it was just white people, or if it was, if you took everybody from one living group today, it wouldn't make any sense, because this is 45,000 years ago. We don't have the same ancestral groups. And they would have been somewhat dark-skinned moving into Europe for the first time. So, I mean, I thought the casting was perfect.
Yeah.
Most of the cast is sort of biracial, so that's why we have sort of this, ambiguous racial group. People were, in the reviews on IMDb, very upset that they're so well-groomed and that they have such well-tailored clothes. And, like, I don't know. I think that tracks. We know that Upper Paleolithic people had sewing needles and stuff, so they were making tailored clothes.
Yeah.
For them to survive in that environment, there'd have to be something, right? Like,
exactly.
Totally.
Like, that's why modern humans hadn't moved into Europe before that point, because it's a cold climate and they were tropically adapted, so they just wouldn't be able to survive without well-tailored clothes.
Yeah.
We know from the Venus figurines that people cared for their hair. And so they're like, some people in the reviews are complaining that they don't have, I guess, shaggy, dirty Neanderthal hair. But like, it would make sense to cut your hair short, because it's, hair is difficult to manage. So that's why we cut our hair short today, right?
And it gets in the way.
The only thing I would say is that Avi, her hair was pretty funky. Like, you could see people having it nowadays. Like, it was pretty stylish.
It's trendy, yeah. It's matching today's trends. But I mean, you can't really escape that, right? You have to come up with some idea of what their hair looks like, and modern styles are always going to influence it a little bit.
And I think if there's one constant through all of human history, it's that we want to look good, and grooming is very much a part of humanity, and people have always done it.
Yes. Yeah, and style. We always, I think it's across all human cultures that there's style.
Yeah.
Aesthetics.
Totally.
But I did appreciate that Heron's hair looked like if I had shaved it, right? So it wasn't completely well done. But that's how it would look, because you'd be doing it with a rock, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Totally.
Another concern in the reviews is that their teeth are too well taken care of, but apart from heavy wear, Upper Paleolithic teeth, people didn't
beautiful.
have the starch-heavy diets that we have today.
Or any sugar.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
This I could come in and teach the listeners.
The floor is yours,
Our
Dr.
dental
Plum.
health, thank you. Our dental health declined terribly with the agricultural revolution. Before the agricultural revolution, we had pretty decent teeth. Cavities and stuff were not super rare, but not super common. And then once we had the agricultural revolution, because we started to eat starchy foods with really lots of sugars, and the type of it was cooked grains and stuff that get stuck in your teeth. So that causes the bacteria to metabolize all that sugar in your mouth, and the byproduct of that metabolism is acidic, which then eats away at your enamel, which causes the cavity, which then causes the infection within your dental cavity. And also our transition in our diet to these more sugary, starchy carbohydrate foods changed our ecosystem of our mouth. So we actually have a different microbiome in our mouth than we did back then. And the microbiome in our mouth now is predominantly cavity-causing bacteria, whereas back then cavity-causing bacteria were more rare. It wasn't the majority of the microbiome. So it does make sense, but aside from because they would probably use their teeth as tools sometimes, that they would have teeth. But they wouldn't have the freakish American teeth with the pearly whites and the straights. So they would still probably have, somebody would have crooked teeth and they would be more of a natural color. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's my lecture. It's fascinating, though.
Yeah, we can comment on the language because, as you said, this is entirely in a fictional language, which I recently discovered is called a conlang, a constructed language. So we've had a few of these before. Alpha had a fake Salutrian language. What's another one that had fake languages?
The Iceman one.
Yeah. Iceman was in a reconstructed Raetic language. This language for the movie is called Tola, which I don't know if that name is based on anything, but apparently the language was a combination of Basque and Arabic, mostly.
Good.
All I know about Basque is that it is very different from every other kind of European language, apart from weirdly Finnish, I think, or Hungarian. But there have been people that have said that it may be a kind of holdover from quite far back. It's kind of like a last holdover and just surrounded on all sides by invading Romance and Germanic languages that had come in much later.
I think that's the logic behind using Basque, because it would possibly be something a little closer to what had been spoken. Although, what's the logic with Arabic? Is Arabic a Proto-Indo-European language family?
I do not know.
I think so.
Maybe if they're just trying to suggest that these are people that have come through the kind of Middle Eastern route, maybe that's what they're trying to show by putting some Arabic in there too. But I thought it was good. I mean, it definitely... I think there's always a problem with these conlangs, as you say, for them just to sound a bit goofy and constructed. You sort of see that in kind of Game of Thrones with some of the languages that they use there and other shows. But it felt quite organic here. I mean, it probably helped that the acting was quite good. But it felt like
I didn't even notice. Like, I just read the subtitles and it came naturally. Yeah. We're going to get... all of our listeners, our 50 listeners, we're going to get at least 12 angry letters about the Game of Thrones quit.
I didn't like Game of Thrones. I'll get if it drives some engagement. I didn't like Game of Thrones. I thought it was stupid.
Oh dear. I very much liked Game of Thrones.
What do you think of the end?
Not brilliant, but most of it leading up to the end was great. It was about the journey, I think, would be how I kind of lie to myself. But yeah, I think any show that has dragons and dire wolves and zombies in it gets my vote.
Yeah.
The only last thing I have in my notes here is that necklace with the little doll figurines on it. Was that based on something? That didn't seem familiar to me. So I was wondering if there's an artifact that one was based on.
Not to my knowledge.
No, I think was just highlighting the baby thing, right? Because otherwise it could have been a throwaway comment. She makes, "I won't lose this baby too." So I think it symbolizes the importance to her.
Yeah, and definitely there are, Paleolithic ivory pendants, but I don't know of any that are any pendants that are recognizably human. I could be wrong on that. they tend to be kind of animal figurines or abstract or beads. But
Yeah. And I think if there was one with the 3 babies, it would be very interpretable, and there'd be a lot of papers and discussion on it.
Yeah. But it's not.
But maybe we've just missed it.
It's not out of the realms of possibility that they could be there waiting to get dug up somewhere.
Yep.
Particularly if they're very small, like what we do have from this period, or from at least shortly after this period, are the Venus figurines, which exist for like tens of thousands of years. And they're pretty small, but they're not as small as these little babies on this necklace, right? So if it's smaller, if it's made out of ivory or bone or something, there's more chance that it could degrade and it'd just be easier to miss.
Yeah.
Also, in a completely different note, when Bea pretends to be dead when he's strangling her, my true crime self just wants to point out that that's actually a really good strategy, because it takes minutes to strangle someone manually. And generally, people's hands get really tired. So if you pretend to die and they can stop, they'll stop, probably. I don't know for sure, but generally. So just play dead. Don't fight the whole time. Just play dead. Give them an excuse to stop. Because it takes like 5 minutes, I think.
Also,
of sustained pressure.
It takes a lot of effort as well. An awful lot of effort.
A lot of hand strength is needed.
Let's start our true crime Stone Age spin-off. We did have a true crime Stone Age movie, that French one, remember? That halfway through turned into a murder mystery.
Oh, yeah.
I think Kim missed that one.
I don't remember that one. That one sounds good, though.
It was a comedy-ish, wasn't it?
Yes, I remember having a little trouble getting into it at first, but by the end I was like fully on board with this weird, absurd kind of comedy. That was called 3 capital R's, 4 lowercase R's, and 3 exclamation marks.
I did miss that one, yeah.
So we need to start like a CSI Clovis or something.
Oh, good name.
All right. Do we have anything more to say about this one?
No, I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, I think it's been unfairly slated on IMDb that it's definitely much better than its rating would suggest. But also at the same time, I think we kind of go into it with the curse of knowledge, and that we can appreciate the efforts that the filmmakers went to kind of use some of the information from the literature, whereas possibly your kind of Joe Schmo would not appreciate that.
So it's a good caveman movie, but hard for us to assess whether it's just a good movie or a good horror movie or a good thriller movie from our perspective, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's the most amazing one, but it's not... I've seen much worse horror movies, even not for this podcast.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that we never do on this podcast, except for the couple of times where I say that we never do it, is a call to action. So if you've listened to the end of our podcast, why don't you give us a review or a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? We should have, a few weeks ago, told people that if you're subscribed on Google Podcasts, to subscribe somewhere else, because Google Podcasts is gone. But I imagine that everybody who's on Google Podcasts already knew how to do that. So
I had no idea there was even a Google Podcast. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's what I was using, so I liked the way it worked, but it wasn't the most popular platform for podcasts.
Oh, we have 9 ratings now on Apple.
Ooh.
Oh, really?
So yeah, let's work together, team, and get us up to 60 listeners. Rate and subscribe.
Hey, did I mention to you guys that my friend, our graphic designer, David Bach, was updating all of our YouTube title cards? Did you guys ever see those?
No.
What's a YouTube title card?
Well, all of our podcast is on YouTube, but it's just audio only. So it's just a still image with like the waveform on the background. But like the thumbnail for when you're searching, you can customize that. So Dave's been going through for the last few months in his spare time, coming up with fun little thumbnails for us to get more clicks.
Oh, cool.
Which I don't know
Thank
that we
you.
don't have that many clicks on YouTube overall because it's a audio podcast. So I mean, most of our listeners are on the podcast apps. But if you were to search us on YouTube, we have very fun clickbaity style thumbnails on all of our.
I'm seeing that now. That's awesome.
Nice. I'm going to look right now.
I think so far my favorite is the episode 9 Planet of the Apes, which is reviewed by Damn Dirty Apes.
Dave is a friend of mine from undergrad, and he did anthropology, but then he switched over to graphic design, and he's a very good graphic designer.
Yeah,
he
he
did
is.
our logo. He does lots of stuff for me on the side for this podcast. He did the logo on the t-shirts that we have, which are available, which we can mention. If you want to win a t-shirt, send us a correction. Something that we got wrong in the episode, or something that was wrong in the movie that we didn't talk about in the episode. And you can send that to us by email at screensofthestonage@gmail.com. Like I said, I'm running that contest indefinitely at this point. So until I run out of t-shirts or I run out of money or something.
Or run out of enthusiasm, one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, the one of Bones with you and Mariana is so cute. That one's my favorite.
That one's great because in the actual Bones, the TV show promotional material he used, it has Bones and Booth holding a magnifying glass covering half their face, and there's skulls in it, but the skulls don't align with their heads in the original thing. And so he has done it with me and Mariana there, but he's made it so that the skulls actually do align
Actually
well.
align.
So,
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
mhm.
Wow, they look great. It makes us look really like real, like a real thing.
Yeah, if you, all of you out there, if you ever need graphic design work, make sure you have a friend who's a very good graphic designer, because you can't just ask people to be like, hey, can you give me free graphic design work? Can you give me free web development? But if you have good friends that just want to help you out, then it's really works out well to your advantage.
And big up Dave for his awesome work.
Yeah,
Yep,
thank you so
I'll
much.
put Dave's webpage in the description.
Our scientists are furious about this one on the cruise.
If you've been enjoying Screens of the Stone Age, get in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter at SOTSA_podcast and on Facebook at SOTSA podcast, or send us an email to screensofthestonage@gmail.com. Screens of the Stone Age is supported by the Palaeoanthropological Society of Canada. Find out more at pasc-scpa.ca.